It's tabletop time! That's apparently how we do things now. Hello and welcome to another video. And today, as you probably saw from the thumbnail, we're doing something a little bit wet because it has come time in the Great Garden of Nurgle for their once millennial birthday. So yeah, we're basically gonna be making a Nurgle boy clean. I got this box of putrid Blightkings and I'm looking at this guy. I'm looking at this guy real intensely. And I'm gonna effectively convert him up to be smooth. What if that lad wasn't in fact a foul worshipper of the god of plagues and diseases? And what if instead he was just a simple man having a bar? Well, without further ado, let's dive in. Now, I must confess, I have sort of eyed this model off ever since launch. This was something where I could see the mortal followers of the gods of chaos starting to be modeled in Age of Sigmar and in Warhammer the Old World, and it was really cool, and diving into those would have been a little bit too big a project. I wasn't in love with like Plague Bearers and some of the bulk models, but I've always had a soft spot for these models, so getting to not only paint them but also clean them up and make them as you know, the gods intended. Well, maybe not as the gods intended, given that they are blessed by Nurgle's touch. Make them as no one ever needed to see them. There are heaps of options on these sprues. You have so many really cool different ways of building them. There's so many options. For this project though, I want the maximum bare naked skin available. I want to see this guy look like he's just come out of the bath. So we've just got the one armor plate on the shoulder. I'm grabbing this big old bell, and I'm quite sure this bell is not going to end up a bell. In fact, I'm definitely going to turn this bell into a giant scrubbing brush. Now, if only I could find a rubber ducky. So I'm going to start by clipping off some bits, but before I do that, I actually want to grab a test model. And Jazza has the First Strike box, the previous starter set for Warhammer. There was one of these really cheap entry-level boxes, and it has a bunch of Poxwalkers in it. I thought I'd grab a Poxwalker and make it a little sauna pal for our Nurgle Blightking. But mostly it was as a tester, so I could play with some materials I haven't used before. This is actually going to be my first time ever using Milliput. I've never touched it in my life. I have always been a green stuff boy, but I think that for soft, like, bulk sculpting, that Milliput is going to be a lot easier to work with. So I'm going to try Milliput. Now, because this was my tester, I was quite willing to dive in with the clippers. Take away the horns, take away the big blobby pussy things, and then get carving. This was disgusting. I don't recommend doing this. I don't know, it felt kind of like those pimple popper videos, but like, yeah, just disgusting. I did not like excising the boils from these models, and not the most satisfying process. But at the end of the day, we get to something that is, yeah, still gross. I used the mold line remover, cleaned up as much as I could, and it was ready for Milliput. My first time with Milliput proved to be fairly easy. It's a lot easier to work with than green stuff in the sense of laying down bulk gap filler. In fact, as a gap filler, I'd say its properties are quite good from what I've used today. It was really easy to fill out those sort of welts and abscesses and recesses in the skin. So I did a rough job on this tester model, and I was pretty quickly satisfied that I had a handle on the tool. So it was time to dive in and just do it on the Blightking. Filling out these pustulous holes in the body, it quickly gave this beautiful round-bellied appearance to the Blightking that just immediately starts to evoke those wooden sauna vibes that I'm trying to get across, because this big boy is having a lovely day on birthday. I can't. This is a ridiculous concept. I set to work bulking out the model. I filled in all the holes, and then the one area I just wanted to add some bulk, so this is very rough, is just the head. I'm planning on putting a hairdo on top with green stuff, but I wanted to give the head a little bit of volume, or the hair a little bit of volume, so I could just sculpt on the outside hair, and that's it. So with that done on both the Poxwalker and on the Blightking, I was done for the day. So one tool I've not had when sculpting that the Tabletop Time Studio does have is these silicone sculpting tools. They've got a soft silicone tip. I love them and strongly recommend anyone go out and get them if you're learning to sculpt or starting to do sculpting on miniatures, or even if you are like me and you'd sculpted sort of with one of those metal sculpting tools and that was it. Look, they're not perfect for everything, but man, they give you the flexible tip and the ability to get into angles and different shapes. I actually really like them, so they're pretty cool, and it was fun to use. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just cleaning. Cleaning up as good as our beautiful Nurgle boys. Yeah. So we've got our little tester model that's not nearly as good, but then we've got our awesome actual Blightking coming along. Milliput done, carved out and ready for green stuffing this afternoon. So green stuff will come in and I'll do some more of those like more finicky fine detail stages where that thickness and sort of different texture of green stuff will be a little more useful. I'm planning on doing hairdo and like sort of towels wrapped around them. So yeah, I guess let's fast forward to the end of the day and dive into me working on some green stuff. Okay, so I knew at once that I needed to make a towel for these. Jazzer had kind of pitched if Nurgle had a bath, and I knew he meant that he wanted me to clean up a Nurgle model, but the way he phrased it just made me, well, kind of insistent on the idea that these guys would literally have just gotten out of a bath. So I set about using green stuff, which I'm slightly more familiar with, but I certainly wouldn't say I'm particularly talented with. I haven't used it enough or really mastered it enough to be an expert, so I just did my best. Using a roller, I flattened out the green stuff, sticking it between some, actually it was the plastic from the Blightting's box with a bit of water so that it wouldn't stick to that surface. I flattened it out, cut some long rectangles out, and then gently pressed in a basic hem that would kind of, when painted, would make it look more like a towel. Once again, I just went for it, and I used water. Water is your friend with these things, and these silicone molding tools were also very good. Silicone, of course, being very non-stick, combined with water meant that I had sculpting tools that wouldn't pull away the green stuff from the model, so it wasn't actually too hard to get the towel where I wanted the towel to be. I wrapped it around, starting with, of course, the test model, the Poxwalker, and sort of squished up the top to make a rough looking bit where the towel had been wrapped around. On the Blightking, I chose instead to actually make a snake out of green stuff and then sort of roll it up, wrap it around, and then press that on, which would emulate better the curled up towel that was wrapped around him. I like the idea of forcing the towel to billow out a little bit at the sides as if it can barely wrap around the Blightking, which amuses me unendingly. I don't know about you. Now the hair for these models, once again, I started with the Poxwalker. I am certainly not an expert at sculpting hair, so I whacked on some globs and just started pressing in some lines. I think for the Blightking though, once again, I was glad that I had done it on the Poxwalker first. With the Blightking, I was a little bit more reserved, going for a bit of a less is more approach. So I made just 2 pieces and I thought I'd give him the most hilarious bowl cut imaginable. So he's come out of the bath, he's got his little bowl cut, it's on fleek, he's rocking it. And then that's our Blightking boy. So yeah, I think the hair on the Blightking with a simple haircut actually turned out pretty well. It'll be interesting to see how it comes out when it's painted. And then as a finishing touch, I rolled up a washcloth and had the 2 models firmly grasping their washcloth, ready to take it to the laundry. I don't know. Let's not think about it. Let's just leave it. You know, let's not worry too much about that. Anyway, with the modeling done, these need to sit aside overnight to dry. So I look forward to coming back tomorrow and painting my very clean Nurgly boys. All right, so I am done making abominations. Basically, these are horrible. In the best possible way. When I delved into chaos and began researching Nurgle, even if it was to clean it up, you'd better believe I didn't want the Inquisition finding out. And that's why I'm happy to announce that today's sponsor is Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is a leading VPN provider with over 30 million downloads across the globe. So a VPN encrypts your data. It's a little bit like a Gallowfield. It'll keep you safe from all those internet nasties. We at Tabletop Time live in a little big country called Australia. And it's a little known fact about Australia, but we have absolutely atrocious internet access. And not only that, we have really bad geo-blocking on our streaming services. So if you use private internet access, you can bypass those geo restrictions and watch all that sweet content that American Netflix viewers get. I mean, or Canadian, or perhaps anywhere in the world. Private internet access has customer support available 24/7. So it doesn't matter when you go, I need help. You'll be able to get it. Private internet access has a strict no logs policy on all platforms: Mac, OS X, Windows, Android, and many more. You can use your private internet access subscription to protect up to 10 devices at once. If you like the sound of this
sweet protection,
they have an amazing deal available right now for our viewers. You can get a 3-year subscription with 2 extra months free at 83% off. That's a big percent off. That's right, it comes to $2.08 a month to securely browse the internet with private internet access. If you'd like to take advantage of this deal, go to the links in the description or type in www.privateinternetaccess.com/tabletop time. Thank you once more to our sponsor, Private Internet Access. And now, safe and secure, I'm ready to go in and paint my foul nurgly beasties. Let's tackle this one. When painting my Nurgle model, it was super helpful to have my tester, my Poxwalker, who I used on every step of the model to ensure that I could practice before I dived into the big project. The skin was the first place I wanted to start with. I chose healthy Caucasian skin tones that were the complete opposite of what we usually see for Nurgle. I still wanted him to be fairly pale for the contrast against the gross, rotten holes in people look that Nurgle usually has. But with this one, I wanted it to look sort of reminiscent of a Roman coming out of a bathhouse or something like that. I followed the fairly traditional Citadel style of painting for this skin, just building up highlights on raised areas and leaving the pinky flesh sort of closer towards the folds in the skin. Then I dived onto painting the towel. There were 2 ways I could approach painting the towel. I could either paint it dirty and filthy, as if he's just wiped the gunk off him as he's cleaned himself, that Nurgleness now gone and left to ruminate in the folds of his fabric, or I could paint it pristine, like a hotel's towel that you might find in the bathroom. And that's the approach I ultimately went for. I was worried that if I muddied up the towel a lot, it would kind of distract from the idea of it being a clean Nurgle model, because it would just be taking the filth and putting it somewhere else. The towel was painted incredibly simply, just using a light bluish grey and then white for the highlights. I think it fits nicely against the skin, and if I'd gotten rid of the armor panels, this guy really would have looked naked and strolling out of a bath. I'm glad we've got the armor panels. And speaking of them, this was the one area that the test model didn't have. So when I went to paint the armor, I decided to stick with traditional Nurgle. I went with greens and just painted it without any rust or detritus. Once again, I was drawn towards the idea of actually rusting this up a lot, as if it had been in the water and then rusted. But again, I felt that if I kept it dirty, it would just feel like I'd painted a Nurgle soldier with filthy towel and armor that for some reason had pristine, healthy skin. So I didn't put any of that usual weathering on it. I just put your standard highlights up in green to accentuate the detail. I've seen a lot of models, or any other time I've seen Nurgle sculpted into something else, where they'll use putty to fill out the armor panels, making them look less rotten and less decayed. But given that the concept was what if Nurgle has a bath, I quite like the idea of keeping the Nurgle aesthetic on the armor, because of course you can't simply wash a carved symbol out of steel. So this Nurgle warrior has his very pristine clean skin, and also sparkly, shiny, fresh, but very battle-weathered armor. I painted the hair of them with sandy blonde colors. I felt it fit really well as a strange contrast to these Nurgle. You've got this almost monastic hair on this disgusting Blightking, and it is a contrast that I find kind of amusing. As for the Poxwalker, on painting it, I did a pretty bad job sculpting the hair, but it was good practice. It's too thick and voluminous, but maybe he's just got that amazing hairspray-filled 80s pop or rock hairdo. Gotta love that. Now the Nurgle brush, I used brass on all the metal elements because that's one of the core tenets of a Nurgle paint scheme, but I didn't put any weathering or oxidization on it because, again, I didn't want to muddy up the fact that this was a clean Nurgleman. With the model finished, it was time to paint effects. These effects were fairly important, I thought, for selling the image of him just traipsing out of a bath. I used some snow effect, which I was hoping would be able to simulate bubbles, and then I used UV resin to get a large water drop coming from the washcloth in his hand. I like to think that he's sort of wringing out the water and it's about to drip onto the ground. As a finishing touch, I used some of the Vallejo, I can't pronounce this goddamn word, it's Vallejo, Vallejo, but I can't say it. So anyway, I grabbed one of the Vallejo space dusts. I knew these iridescent paints would be hard to use, but I quite like the idea of adding a little bit of sparkle and sheen to the soapy bubbles. So using the snow effects and the space dust, I think we got a decent bubble bath effect. The look is that he's walked out of the bath and the suds are still clinging to him. And then just some gloss varnish splattered around areas he might not have quickly rubbed with a towel. And there we have it. We have our Nurgle man ready to base and show off. I used some Milliput and a plastic roller to squish down a tiled base and then painted them in a simple glossy black, traipsing UV resin and more suds behind him. Here he is in all his resplendent glory. Yeah, what have I done? This is cursed. Jazza, this is really cursed. Yeah, so I'm done. I'm finished. He's all done. But painting that, it really kind of made me feel yuck. It made me feel filthy. I think I'm gonna have to go take a bath.
I, Brother Garentus, will destroy you, sending you back into chaos from whence you came. Never! I will...
Hi. So, yeah, this isn't... I don't usually play with... I thought if Nurgle could have a bath, well, we could just... Thank you to our patrons. Thank you for your support. It's through your support that allows us to have these videos be made. We love you. Please like and subscribe. Bye.